considering them newsworthy, so a lot of his posts get on, whether they contain misinformation, especially on whether he won the election and COVID, you name it, the fraudulent elections that he alleges, etc. But I wonder, what are both of you prepared to do regarding Donald Trump's use of your platforms after he stops being president? Will he still be deemed newsworthy, and will he still get to use your platforms to spread his misinformation?
Senator, let me clarify my last answer. We are also having academics study the effect of all of our election measures, and they'll be publishing those results publicly. In terms of President Trump and moving forward, there are a small number of policies where we have exceptions for politicians under the principle that people should be able to hear what their elected officials are saying and candidates for office. But by and large, the vast majority of our policies have no newsworthiness or political exception. And so if the president or anyone else is spreading hate speech or inciting violence, or posting content that delegitimizes the election or valid forms of voting, those will receive the same treatment as anyone else saying those things. And that will continue to be the case.
Remains to be seen. Mr. Dorsey?
So we do have a policy around public interest, where for global leaders, we do make exceptions in terms of whether if a tweet violates our terms of service, we leave it up, but we leave it up behind an interstitial, and people are not allowed to share that more broadly. So a lot of the sharing is disabled, with the exception of quoting it, so that you can add your own conversation on top of it. So if an account suddenly is not a world leader anymore, that particular policy goes away.
So I am running out, but I have, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record a number of studies, particularly a November 1st, 2020 article in the Washington Post titled "Trump Allies Largely Unconstrained by Facebook's Rules Against Repeated Falsehoods Cement Pre-Election Dominance," a May 26, 2020 article in the Wall Street Journal titled "Facebook Executive Shutdown Efforts to Make the Site Less Divisive," 3 studies from Media Matters finding no anti-conservative bias on Facebook, and an article by Dr. Francesca Tripodi titled "No, Big Tech Isn't Silencing Conservatism." I would like to enter these items into the record.
Without objection, Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, each of you has founded an extraordinarily successful company. And they're both American companies. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't say congratulations. I'm very proud of the fact that it was American ingenuity that did this. I think we can also both agree that both Twitter and Facebook have enormous power as a result of your success. You're not companies, you're countries, at least in terms of power. I want to test a point of view here. I'm not sure I subscribe to it, but I want to get your thoughts on it. Mr. Dorsey, do you believe everything you read?
No.
Why not?
I think it's healthy to have skepticism about everything and have a mindset of verifying it and using as much information as possible to do so.
Do you have somebody on your staff who protects you from reading things that they think you shouldn't?
No.
Mr. Zuckerberg, do you believe everything you read?
No, Senator.
Why not?
Because a lot of things are incomplete or incorrect.
So you exercise your own judgment?
Yes, Senator.
have somebody on your staff whose job is to filter things that they think you should not be reading?
Senator, not externally, although I would hope that the teams that I work with internally do their best to make sure that the information that they're presenting me with are always accurate.
Here is a point of view. I'm not sure I subscribe to it, but it is a legitimate point of view, I think, and I'd like to know your thoughts on it. You have both, and this is directed to each of you, you have both Democrats and Republicans upset with you. The Democrats are upset with you, this point of view holds, because they want you to publish. I'm not using that word as a term of art or science here, with any special meanings. The Democrats want you to publish stuff on your platforms that they agree with, but they don't want you to publish stuff that they disagree with. And this point of view also holds that the Republicans are upset with you because they want you to publish things on your platforms that they agree with, but they don't want you to publish stuff on your platforms that they disagree with. What if we had a rule? What if your companies had a rule? This is a question, not a suggestion. What if your companies had a rule that said, okay, people aren't morons. I would like to treat people as they treat me. That is that I can read what I want to read and exercise my own good judgment about whether I choose to believe it. So here's the rule we're adopting. If you go on Twitter or Facebook, you can't bully people. You can't threaten people. Maybe this is a subset of both of those, but you can't commit a crime with your words, and you can't incite violence. But other than that, you can print any damn thing you want to, and we'll let our users judge. Give me your thoughts on that.
Those are generally the rules we have. I mean, our focus on these policies.
No, you don't, Mr. Dorsey. Excuse me for interrupting, but you're censoring right and left, trying to make both sides happy, and you're making neither side happy.
No, that's not the intention. The intention is
I know it's not the intention, but it's the result.
I can see why you might say that and why you might perceive that, and that's why we do think it's important that we add more transparency to how we moderate content, that we give more control to individuals to moderate their own content and focus on algorithms. But a lot of our policies are focused on making sure that people feel that they can express themselves in the first place and not driven away. Everything you mentioned about bullying, about harassment around illegal content or violence, incitement to violence, that is what our policies are, and that is.
I know, and excuse me for interrupting, but my time's limited, and I want to hear from Mr. Zuckerberg. But you're not just doing that. You started to censor content. Why not have both Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump able to say whatever they want to on your platform? Mr. Zuckerberg, so long as they don't threaten, bully, incite violence, commit a crime. I'm not justifying the use of either Twitter or Facebook to hurt the Rohingyas. Mr. Zuckerberg, what are your thoughts on my suggestion? Get out of the censorship business, other than the exceptions I talked about.
Senator, in principle, I agree with what you are saying, although I think that there are more categories of harm than just the ones that you've mentioned. So, but I think the basic principle behind what you're saying is a definite definition of free expression that says that people should be able to share their opinions broadly, except if it's going to cause imminent or irreparable harm to another person. Which, now, even the most ardent First Amendment supporters, agree that you shouldn't be able to yell fire in a crowded theater if there's not actually a fire, right? Because that could put people in the risk of imminent harm. So you mentioned terrorism, you mentioned child exploitation and bullying as forms of harm. And I think a lot of the debate is around what are other forms of harm. For example, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we've assessed that misinformation about COVID and treatments that could put people in additional risk of getting the disease or not seeking the right treatment if they have it, that those are also things that could cause imminent harm. We've taken the position that
Mr. Zuckerberg, let me interrupt you, and I really do apologize. But I'm going to be cut off in a second, inappropriately so. I'm not saying you're wrong by doing what you just described, but that makes you a publisher. And that creates problems with Section 230. And I just think that one point of view is that at some point, we've got to trust people to use their own good judgment, to decide what they choose to believe and not believe, and not try to assume that we're smart and they're stupid, and that we can discern believable information and information that shouldn't be believed, but everybody else is too stupid to do it.
Okay.
I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think you put your finger on a really, maybe the central issue, Senator Kennedy. How do we let people make up their own minds without what they're saying, creating violence or threats to others? Very complicated endeavor. Senator Booker. Senator Booker.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me? Chairman?
Yes, and to our witnesses, we have two more senators, and we'll be